Hello and welcome to Cinema 4D Lite Release 21. My name is Athanasios Pouzantzis, aka Noseman, and in this video I will show you an overview of the techniques used to build and animate this cartoon-style game device inside Cinema 4D Lite Release 21. Let's start by firing up Cinema 4D Lite from within After Effects. All you have to do is go to the File menu, New, and select Maxon Cinema 4D File. Select an appropriate folder to save the file after you name it, and Cinema 4D Lite will launch. We are going to build this game device using splines. From this menu up here, if you click and hold, you'll see a host of spline objects. And in particular, we are going to use a rectangle spline and a couple of circles. So release your mouse over the rectangle and you can see a rectangle in your viewport, and you can see a rectangle object has been added to the object manager. Now when it's orange, it's selected. So when you select this, you can go down here to the attributes manager and change some attributes relating to the particular object. Now I don't want to view this from a perspective view. I want to view this from the front so I can go and set up my splines to begin with. In order to do that, I can click on this fourth little button from these four up here, and that will take me to the four views, and I'm going to select the front view as labeled over here on the left. And if you click on the appropriate button in that front view, it will maximize that view. And this is how you go from four views to one of the particular views and back to the perspective. With my rectangle selected and in the attributes manager, I'm going to set the width to be 300, and I think I have the appropriate shape. Now I can activate rounding to make it nice and round, and I think I like this. Now this is not just a rectangle, it's the body of our game device. So you can change the name of an object by double-clicking on the name in the Object Manager, double-click, and let's name this Body and press Enter. So now we have the body rectangle. So now I want to create the screen frame. I can always go and create a new rectangle over here, but I'm going to do something different. I'm actually going to click and drag the body, and before releasing the mouse, I'm going to press Command or Control to make a copy in the Object Manager. I'm then going to double click and call it Frame. Press Enter so I know which spline is which. Now you can see that they're both identical, so they happen to fall on each other. And if this grid over here is irritating you, as it is me, go to the filter menu of the viewport and go down here where it says grid and deactivate it. And now we have a nice clean view. Let's go all the way back to our object manager over here. Make sure the frame is selected, and down in the attributes manager, make sure the object tab is selected. And let's go and change the values of the width and the height. So I'm going to go to these little arrows here, click and drag down or up. And you can see that the numbers change interactively. And let me eyeball it. I want to make it this wide. Now let's go to the height, click and drag. And I'm going to make it this tall, so it's like a 4:3 screen. The next thing I want to do is move it up. So make sure your Move tool is selected from this little palette up here. And what I'm going to do, so that I retain the horizontal position and just change the vertical position, is hover my cursor over this green arrow, which is the Y axis. Click and drag, and this will allow you to move it upwards. I think I like it over there. Now the next thing is to make this rounding a bit smaller. So go back to the attributes manager and play with the radius value and make the radius as much as you want it so it looks nice. I'm pretty sure you do a better job at this than I do. Now let's make the inner part, which is the screen. Again, click and drag, don't release the mouse, press Command or Control, release the mouse now, and we have another copy. And let's double click and call this Screen and press Enter. I want this frame to have an equal thickness, top, bottom, left and right. So I'm going to do some number crunching here. With the screen selected, I'm going to go to the width and I'm going to click on the right side of the centimeters or any other unit for that matter and type -50. And this is going to subtract 50 centimeters from the 255. Press enter and we have 205. We can do the same here. Click, type -50, press enter, and now you are certain that this distance, this, and this are equal. And let's go and make our radius a bit smaller, and there you go. We have the screen. I'm going to use similar methods to create a couple of buttons here, a cross little joystick here, and I'm going to add a couple of circles here as my game device buttons as well. Again, let's make a copy, drag, press Command or Control, then release the mouse, and I'm going to click and drag anywhere in the gray area to move this somewhere over there. I want the center to be fixed, and I'm going to adjust the height and the width. So let me double click and call this L for left button, press enter, and then I'm going to go down here and again play with the numbers to make this as big as I want. Click and drag to make it shorter. Fantastic. Now I'm going to make another copy, but this time I'm going to use another method. Instead of dragging here in the Object Manager, I'm actually going to hover over the red axis, the X axis, press Command or Control, click and drag, and I'm making a copy in the viewport. I'm going to bring it here, and now I have another copy. It's called L button 1. I'm going to bring it down here just so that these are in a certain order, and I'm going to double click on the name, and I'm going to type R button, press enter, and now I'm going to go down to the Attributes Manager and adjust the width and retain the same height. Excellent. Now let's make that little joystick cross over here. I'm going to make a copy here this time, Command or Control to make a copy. Let's call this cross horizontal H, and I'm going to click and drag, put it somewhere here, and I'm going to go and adjust my width and my height and click a couple of times here to make it a bit sharper, and then I'm going to drag this down, press Command or Control, double click to call it cross V for vertical, press enter, and swap these numbers 31 tab 73 enter. So now I have that cross as well. Fantastic. You can click anywhere in the gray area to deselect everything. Now the last thing is to add those two circular buttons. So go up here, hold, and go and add a circle. Go to the Attributes. The Object tab should be selected, and in the radius, click and drag so you make it the size you want it, and then click and drag anywhere to drag it in place. And let's make a copy. I'll bring it down here and call this button T for button top. Click, drag, Command, release, double click, button B for bottom, and then select it if you deselect it by mistake as I did, and click and drag and bring it down here. I have all the elements needed to construct this object. Let's go and see how this looks in 3D space. I'm going to minimize my front view by clicking on that, and now I'm going to maximize my perspective view by clicking on that. And if I go to this button here, which renders the current active view in the viewport over here, you will see that nothing happens, because by default, splines are not objects, they're not renderable. In order to render something, we need what we call geometry, and we can generate geometry using generators. Now that's simple. Well, the generator we're going to use today is up here. Click and hold, and it's the extrude generator, and it has a green color. Generators have green colors. Now release your mouse here, and now you have this extrude generator, but still nothing has changed other than the generator being added in our Object Manager. In order to make a generator actually generate geometry, we need to feed it a spline. So go to the body, click and hold, drag it so that the arrow points downwards, and release, and this makes the body a child of the generator. Now this says extrude, it's quite generic. I want to make sure I know what everything is. So you can double click on the name here and press Command C to copy the text this time. Double click on the extrude name and Control V to paste the name and press enter. Now we have the same name in the extrude generator, and it's easier for us to see what everything is. It will make more sense when everything will have its own extrude generator later on. Now, with the body generator selected, if we go to the Object tab in the Attributes Manager, and you can see it has different attributes than the spline itself. Depending on what you have selected, you'll be presented with a host of parameters which relate to the type of object. The movement parameter defines the thickness, basically, and in which direction. X, Y, Z, and the Z is the blue, as you can see from this little legend. X, Y, Z for RGB. I want to make this thicker. So let's go to the 20, double click here to select everything, type 100 and press enter. And now it's nice and thick. Now I can go about creating all these extrude generators one by one, but there's a nifty little trick. If you click and drag here, you can make a multi-selection. So I've selected all the splines underneath. And before clicking on this little extrude generator icon, I'm going to press my Option or Alt key. I've got my Alt key pressed, and I'm going to click once on this. And this will create an extrude generator for every one of our splines. And it's going to align it in the same position as well, which makes this very convenient. Now, the names are very much identical, extrude 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And I want to take the names from the splines and paste them into the generators. And I'm going to use a couple of buttons to do that. So double click on the bottommost spline so that the text, the name, is selected. Press Command C and then use your keyboard up arrow to go up, and then Command or Control V to paste. Up, Control C, up, Control V. Fantastic. It only took a few seconds of repetitive actions. Excellent. So everything now should have geometry. But if I render this, you can't see any of the other splines generating anything in particular. And that is because, and if we go to the top view, minimize the perspective view, maximize the top view, you'll see that the front faces of all these objects are aligned. So there's no difference between them. So let's go back to our perspective view and see how we can mitigate this problem. Well, it's fairly simple. We can go and select the objects and pull them slightly to the front. And at the same time, I'm going to go to the display menu of my viewport and activate the Garage shading lines. When you activate any of these modes that says lines, it will show you the actual geometry, and it makes it easier for you to see what's going on. So I'm going to go to the frame, and I'm going to hover over the Z axis, providing I have my Move tool selected, and drag it ever so slightly forward. So now we have a little bit of a difference. I'm going to go to my screen and do the same thing and drag it ever so slightly forwards. Then I'm going to select the left button and then Command or Control click on the right button. So I have a multiple selection. And now I have this axis, this gizmo, in the midpoint of the selection. I can hover over the Z and drag it out a bit. And then I can go and say I want the cross and Command or Control the cross V. And with my Command or Control still pressed, I'm going to select the button T and button B, and now everything is selected. Hover over this and drag them slightly forwards. Excellent. So I can click here now, deselect everything. That's fantastic. If I render now, you will see that I get some sort of idea of each and every object separately. We can now safely assume that the modeling portion of this tutorial is done. So let's go to the look. Let's add some color. Let's make these objects have different colors so that it looks like a Toon style render. Now, first of all, let's clean this up a bit. We can see the splines and the generators. If I want to twirl these closed, I just click on these little minus buttons over here. There you go. This one, and so forth. But I can always go to the View menu and fold all my objects. And now I have this nice, neat view. So let's go and create some materials. In order to do that, we need to go down here where we have the Material Manager. Go to the Create menu, Materials, and let's create a new standard material. Now I'm going to double click on this, and we get the material editor. I'm going to drag it over here, just place it over here, and then I'm going to use this little button, click and drag, and this actually pans the camera, and this click and drag dollies the camera in and out, and this one here, the third one, tumbles it around. So I'm going to adjust my view by clicking on these buttons appropriately. So I can see my little game device, and I can see my material editor. Now this material editor allows us to change the name. I'm going to call this body main and press enter. And the way we're going to colorize this is to make it look like it's a flat cartoony object. So I'm going to turn off the color and the reflectance, and I'm going to turn on the luminance. The luminance provides you the ability to create flat colors. And to begin with, I'm actually going to create a light blue desaturated color, something like this. Fantastic. And if I want to apply a material to an object, I have to go down here, grab this swatch, click and drag it, drag it, drag it, drag it, all the way to the object I want to apply it to, and release my mouse. And this is going to create a texture tag or material tag, and it's going to be applied to the whole object. But I want this side to be darker. So first of all, let's make a darker version of this material. I'm not going to create a new material. I'm actually going to copy this one. So similarly to the Object Manager, if I drag this to the side and before releasing my mouse I press Command or Control, I can actually make a copy of the material. Double click so that it's active in the material editor. I'm going to call it Body Dark, press Enter, and let's go and change the color. So I'm going to make this much darker, a bit more saturated, and I think that's good enough. Maybe a bit lighter will do. Excellent. So I'm going to drag it on the same object because the side is part of the same object. And what you will see is that it's going to override the color before it, because that's what happens. Any new material we put to the right is going to override everything on the left. But we do have an ace up our sleeve. Select the Extrude Generator and go to the Attributes Manager to the Selections tab. And here we can expose some selections which are a part of how this is constructed. The shell is exactly this. It's this extruded part. If I activate the shell, you will see a selection tag being created. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my texture tag, and you can see here in the Tag tab, underneath it says Selection, which is currently empty. And I can click and hold this, and as long as you don't release your mouse, nothing will change. Drag it all the way down until you see that S. Release. And now this material has only been applied to the component which is marked by the S letter, which is the shell. Now I don't need to drag this thing in here. I can always type a capital S, but this makes it a bit more intuitive so you know what's going on. And we're going to repeat this for the rest of the objects because we're going to have a darker shade on the shell and a lighter one on the front. So let's make some more materials. I'm going to click and drag, press Command, release, double click. Let's call this button top, press Enter, and I'm going to make this a little bit of a paler color, maybe that. I like that. And I'm going to select it and drag it on the left button. And now I'm going to drag it on the right button, but I'm not going to go all the way down here because I am terribly lazy. I'm actually going to drag it down, press Command or Control, and actually copy that texture tag on the other object. And as we do this, you're going to see that these little components are changing colors because we can see a preview of the colors. Now let's go and select both the left button and then press Command or Control to select the right button. Let's expose the shell. So now we have the shell selection in both. It doesn't make a difference if this is on the left or the right. It just happens to be where it is. So don't worry about it. So let's go and make a copy of this. Drag, Command, release, double click, button dark, Enter. Let's make it a bit darker, a bit more saturated. And let's go and drag it on the left button, Command or Control on the right one. And remember, this is the S, the shell, so I can go and type S in here, providing it's capital, press Enter, go here, I can type S. Excellent. Now, if these lines now are confusing you, we can always go and turn them off by going to a mode without the word lines. And I can deselect everything. You can see that the colors are coming through. Now we have the cross H and V. Let's go and apply this one here and Command or Control this one over here. And now I need a darker version. So let's go and select this, make a copy, press Command or Control, release. Let's call this Cross Dark. Press Enter. Let's make it dark and more saturated. Fantastic. Let's drag this over here and Command drag over here to make a copy. Let's select this and Command or Control multi-select this one. Let's activate the shell, and again let's go here, and now I'm just going to drag it in because I can. Select this, drag this in, and now we have our dark shade. And finally, let's make our little circles. I'm going to go and drag this little color, bring it over here, press Command or Control, release, double click, call it Circle Light, and let's go and add some sort of pinky color here. I think I like this one, and let's go and drag it on button T and the other button B, and let's Command or Control copy this one, double click, Circle Dark, press Enter. Let's darken this up and saturate it and bring it towards the red, and let's drag this little guy here, and let's drag this little guy here. You can see I'm doing the same thing using different techniques so you can see what's going on. And now, just so that you know, I can actually select this and type capital S without actually exposing this. Exposing this by using the selections just allows you to have better control to understand what's going on. These are selections that are always active internally, so I can just click here and type S and press Enter. If you want to learn what type of selections any generator has, just click on this and you can go to the Selections tab and see capital S, the start cap, the front would be C1, the end cap C2, the rounding R1 and R2 respectively, and then we have edge selections and so forth. But these are a bit more advanced topics for another tutorial. Great. Now what I want to do is go to my frame and apply this dark material. Where's my frame? Here it is. Go down, select the cross, drag it all the way up here. Excellent. You can see I added it to the screen by mistake. Do not worry. If you want to fix something like this, just drag it without any other key presses and put it there. Fantastic. Now, the last thing I want to do is add a material here that's not a solid color, but has some sort of fake reflection, some sort of lines, diagonal lines. And in order to do that, I'm going to make a copy of this one because the color is quite similar. Press Command or Control to make a copy. Let's double click and name this Screen. Press Enter. And in the luminance now, we're not going to touch the color. We are going to override the color with a gradient. So click over here where it says Texture and hold and select a gradient. And what I'm going to do so you can see what's going on is grab this and drag it on the screen, and immediately you will see the feedback in the viewport, and we have a gradient. Now if you want to change the gradient, edit it, you just click here on that little thumbnail and we have the gradient interface. This little arrow here allows us to twirl this open and have control over the actual knots. Now if you can't see the whole gradient, just go here to the right and expand it until you can see the whole thing. Let me center this a bit so we have a bit more space. So I'm going to move these a bit inwards. Fantastic. And what I'm going to do is select both of them. So shift click to select that one and this one, and go to the interpolation and set it to step. Excellent. So now I can click one of them and bring it here, and you can see that I don't want this to be black. I'm going to select this and make it a nice little light blue. Excellent. And then I can make copies of this, so I can press Command or Control and drag it over just like this, and then copy the white one, and let's make another blue one and the last white one. This looks really nice, but I want it to be diagonal. So go down here to the angle and click and drag until you find the rotation you think is appropriate. And there you have it. We have our little Toon game device nicely colored. Let me close the material editor and let me use my navigation buttons here to bring it to the center and sort of tumble around so I can see it better. Let's render it and see how it looks. It looks beautiful. Now let's go and add some animation. Although I can go to each and every one of these objects, and by selecting them and going to the Coordinates tab, add keyframes. As you can see, these little dots allow us to add keyframes to each and every one of the values. I'm not going to do it quite that way. I'm going to utilize the Mograph tools, the ones that exist over here, that Cinema 4D Lite provides us with. So first of all, I'm going to create a fracture object. Now the fracture object allows us to do the following. If we take a number of objects, I'm going to click and drag over here to select everything underneath it, and I'm going to make everything a child of the fracture object. Now nothing happens just yet, but I'm going to use a certain type of control object to move these things around. Select the fracture object and go back to this little button here, click and hold, and create a plane effector. And immediately everything goes up. Now let's select the plane effector. Let's go to the parameter tab, and you will see that we have position activated in the transform, and that this position is 100 on the Y. Now if I click and drag here, you will see that everything moves. This is not each object moving by itself, it's actually Mograph applying a certain transformation to them. Now I don't want to move the position, so I'm going to turn off the position. I'm going to activate the scale, and I'm going to activate uniform scale. And now if I click on this, you will see that things become bigger and smaller depending on that number. And this is sort of the effect I want to achieve. Now if this is set to 0, then no scaling will occur. And I want to make these small down to a 0 size. So in order to do that, I need to set the scale to -1 and press enter. So you can't see anything anymore because everything now has a 0 size. The next step is to find a way to make them grow to their original size using some sort of control object. For that to happen, you need to go to the Fall Off tab, and here is where we're going to add fields. Go here and click on this little button, regardless of what it says, and find the linear field. Release your mouse, and a linear field object is going to be generated, and suddenly things happen to be out of place. And actually that's what we want to do. Now make sure that the direction is the -y, and if you select this linear field by itself and use your move tool to move it up and down, you will see that as it comes down, slowly these objects are growing to their final shape. A field is nothing more than a three-dimensional mask, but that's something for another tutorial. So all I have to do to create the effect I want is make sure that I animate this from here all the way down to here. So let's go and do that. I'm going to bring this up to the point where I don't see anything visible in my viewport. And I'm going to select the linear field, go to the Coordinates tab, and you can see that the Y value has a number. If you click on this little circle, it will add a keyframe on the frame we are currently on. If I go here and drag this, I can actually scrub on my timeline. So make sure this is at 0. Make sure there's a value here, and you click on this and we have a keyframe. This is similar to the stopwatch in After Effects. Then I'm going to go and click at frame 45, and then I'm going to move this down to the point where everything is at its final scale. Now we don't have auto keyframing enabled, which is the default state of After Effects. So after we do this transformation, we need to make sure that we go here where the keyframe has turned orange and click one more time to add another keyframe. Now if I scrub, you will see that the animation has been applied. And to be honest, this is all it takes to model, shade, and animate an object. To bring this object inside After Effects, just go File, Save Project, and then let's go to After Effects. Inside After Effects, all you have to do is import the file. File, Import, Import File. Select the Cinema 4D project and press Open. And it will appear in your projects. And now let's replace the previous one. So let me drag it and press Alt. And there it is. And you can see that when I scrub, we can see the animation we just created. The final project file, which is available for you to download, will look slightly different because we have some camera animation and a few more things, but you get the general idea. Please make sure you watch all the available tutorials on Cineversity.com and the Cineversity YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.